Have you ever wondered what it takes to become a doctor? Well, I'm here to share my story and how you can do it too. How do you become a doctor? Well, it's a long road. First of all, you definitely want to be committed. I wanted to be a doctor since the age of 10 when my little sister was very ill and she had a surgery and she became well. And I was just so amazed at the prospect of being able to make sick people well. I actually, as a 10-year-old, vividly remember the smell of a hospital and thinking that was the coolest smell. It was like antiseptic smell, but that was a place where people got better. And today, you know, that's been almost 40 years ago. Today, obviously, we have a lot more chronic disease and things are different, and I spent a lot of time in the hospital, not necessarily my favorite place nowadays, but it is something to think about that even as young children, we find it just fascinating when people get better, and that doesn't go away. And I think physicians inherently want to serve and they want to help people heal. And unfortunately, in our climate where we are now, doctors are very hurried and they have to see a lot of patients. There's a lot of administrative burden with, you know, certain type of electronic health records. They don't get reimbursed. So setting aside all the problems, I would still encourage you, if you choose or have a desire to become a doctor, to really think about it, not only from the side of the headaches you may be inquiring about, but there is a long haul. But yes, is it worth it? 100%. My own daughter is about to graduate medical school in May, and she'll be a newly minted doctor going off to practice or do her residency in family medicine as well. So obviously, even with all my stories of the hardships and difficulties, she has chosen to go ahead and do that. When I started medical school, my kids were 5, 3, and 10 months old, and that was a challenge. I was very fortunate to have very supportive family and friends that allowed me to pursue that, even with the added burden of kiddos. My grandmother lived with us during that time. She also became very sick with breast cancer and a stroke. During my third year of medical school, during residency, I had custody of a cousin of mine. That was interesting. So there was a lot of challenges. My poor husband drove 100 miles one way to work for the first 2 years of medical school. So was it difficult? Yes. Was it worth it? Yes. I also remember my first time I was in pharmacology, and this was before, the internet was really pervasive, or computers. I carried a pager if someone needed to page me about the kids, but I got handed these sheets of paper for pharmacology. I was like, oh wow, is this all for the whole semester? I go, oh no, this is for the first 2 weeks. And I freaked out. Like, how am I going to memorize this? I don't even have time to barely make dinner and wash clothes and take care of the kids, and then I got to study all this on top of all the other things. And I got an MD, MBA, so I got my master's in business at the same time I was in medical school. Don't ask me why, it's a long story. But anyway, it turned out fine. So I was like, what am I gonna do? Well, a friend of mine had mentioned that her dad had actually drew cartoons to memorize stuff when he was in school. I was like, well, I love to draw, let's do it. So I started drawing cartoons and grouping things together. For example, a drug class called peptidoglycans. I actually drew a Pepsi bottle, kind of playing out the word of peptidoglycans. And one of those antibiotics in that class is called vancomycin. It's a van. I drew a little van. I colored it red because there's a flushing side effect and some other things. So it's been over 20 years, I can still remember vividly that picture. So I went on to publish 7 books while I was in medical school in my first year of residency. And the way that started was, I used everything I could at my disposal to help me memorize things. And that worked so well that my classmates started using them. And then a publisher came and said, hey, we'd like to publish these. And that turned out great. And so we did. And so made it through medical school. It's 4 years, so you have to go to college for 4 years, get a degree of any kind, but you're going to have to have certain sciences covered, like, you know, general chemistry, physics, organic chemistry, calculus, biology, certain things like that. And each school will have their specifics, but most of them are the standard sciences. I chose to major in biology. It's just easier to major in a science. I'm not sure what I'd done if I would have gotten medical school. I guess I could have done research, taught school or something, which would have been fine too, but definitely wanted to be a physician. So after medical school, most people try to get in immediately thereafter. I chose to wait 6 years. I had stayed home with my kids, or had 3 kids, and then went back when I was 28. And during that time, you know, you want to do as much as you can to make yourself stand out differently. I did jobs that were in the healthcare field during that time. You know, a variety of things. Either you can volunteer, shadowing, you want to have good reference letters, you know, speak to other medical students, what did they do? My daughter worked in a research lab, that did help, you know, and trying to get to know as many people as you can. After you get your your undergrad, then you apply for medical school. It can take a lot of different interviews that can be expensive, so I would definitely look at the ones that would be more inclined to be one where your MCAT score was, which is a test that you would take prior to entrance exam to medical school. You know, where your score is, and then apply to those that would be more conducive to interview you. And I think the interview is really important. When I was in residency and in medical school, I asked if students could be involved with that process. And because I think it's important that students have a unique thought process on who would be a good fit for their school, who would they want to be, you know, colleagues with after they graduate. And that was a great experience, and I learned a ton. I also understood there's a lot of different personalities that apply for medical school. But, you know, if you can get involved with anything like that, maybe volunteering at a medical school, you know, in their admissions office, you know, there's lots of different ways to do this. But anyway, I would definitely apply. The interview, you want to practice, right? But you don't want to be so like, I guess you don't want to have it all memorized, but you want to have some spontaneity in the conversation and ask them questions. Think about the questions you can ask as well. Learn about as much as you can about those who are actually interviewing you, and, you know, seem interested. Make it appear, or, you know, really get excited about the opportunity and be thankful for that, because it is an opportunity that not everybody gets. You know, not everyone gets to be interviewed, and then much less get to actually go to medical school. It's a very selective process. So someone who's taken the time out of their day, not seeing patients or not doing research or whatever, you know, thank them for their time. And that stands out a lot, because that tells them what type of person you are. So during that interview, really enjoy it. You know, try not to be too nervous. Of course you will be, but, you know, or speak to other students who have been interviewed. You know, look in the mirror and practice with a friend or a family member. I'm sure a lot of offices actually have opportunity to help you with that as well. So then you do the interview, and you get accepted to medical school, let's say. That's another 4 years. Now the first 2 years typically it's like accelerated college on crack. So you're sitting and you're learning. Well, back then we had to go to class. Now you probably can do it online, you know, especially COVID and that type of thing. But you definitely want to look at the material before class. You want to try to understand what questions you might want to ask during or after class. Find good study partners. Find a way to set up a study time, you know, schedule it. But you also don't want to just study and, you know, shut yourself away from the world, but you're going to need to have some downtime. So make sure you're getting plenty of rest, you're staying hydrated, and you're eating good food. So it's super easy to go to the vending machine and buy crap food and, you know, anything processed and sugary drinks. Really think that whatever you're feeding your body is going to feed your mind, and you really want to do the best you can with that, because that'll make your sleep better, it'll make your attention better, it'll make everything better. So make sure you're eating tons of fruits and vegetables, beans, whole grains, and just trying to find time for exercise. I know it's hard. Trust me, I know it's hard, really hard, but I still did it. Even with 3 kids, publishing 7 books, did an MD, MBA. If I can do it, you can do it. So you just need to find some time to take care of yourself. Then during the summer to fall before your 4th year of medical school, you start applying for residencies. During that time, you will have, especially your 3rd year, these are your clinical years where you're actually rotating through different things like family practice, internal medicine, surgery, OB, pediatrics, things like that. You will find that you are drawn to one particular area. I really loved kids. I was thinking I wanted to do pediatrics. During my 3rd year, I was like, wow, I love kids. I just want to take care of little kids. What happened though, my grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer during my family medicine rotation. And when I reached out to them to, just to ask for guidance from these physicians who I, looked to for leading me down the right path of learning medical education, I was like, surely they can help me, figure out the best care for my grandmother. But they were so amazing about taking care of me and my family that I was like, actually that's pretty cool. I can do kids and parents and the grandparents and everybody. So the family medicine drew me in with that experience. And so I chose to do family medicine, and that's what I did. Now you may choose to do dermatology, radiology, surgery, OB-GYN, pediatrics, cardiology. So there's going to be different residencies. So you'll go through the residency. These are anywhere from 3 to 5 years. After that, you'll want to think about, well, if you want to do cardiology, you would do like internal medicine first, and then you would do a fellowship. So that's where you would specialize like in gastroenterology, you would specialize in cardiology, things like that. Even then, if you want to specialize further from surgery, they have, you have surgery, then you have a cardiothoracic surgeon. Again, you can spend your entire 20s and some of your 30s just going through training before you actually ever get to practice medicine independently as what we describe as an attending. Your intern year is your 1st year of residency, and then you're considered residency is the years following. Family medicine is 3 years, so my 1st year was my intern year. My last 2 were considered my resident years. And those, I think the hardest years are your 1st year, just getting used to everything. Your 3rd year is your clinical rotations in medical school, and then your intern year, because you're literally a grunt. You're at the bottom of the totem pole, everything falls down to you, and you're just gonna be exhausted. I mean, I don't recall, honestly, not being exhausted for many years. So after that, then you finish your residency, and then the next thing you know, they hand you the plaque and say, hey, guess what? Now you're in charge, and nobody's watching you, nobody's following you, you're not rounding with attendings, like you're it, you're the boss. And so I went off to the Air Force and spent 4 years in the active duty Air Force, and it was pretty crazy. But I was really fortunate during my residency. I actually did moonlighting, and in Texas, where I trained, after your 1st year of residency or your intern year, you can get your medical license. So I had a Texas medical license, and I started moonlighting for extra money, and it was a great experience because you're kind of an attending, but in just a very quick setting. Like I was in ERs in West Texas, urgent care settings, and really got to meet a lot of patients, and it was a great experience. So that is my journey. I hope you find that helpful, but there's many ways to getting the letters MD after your name. You just have to be committed from the beginning and really make sure that that is something you want. It's expensive, and it's a serious commitment, and it's always an honor to take care of patients. They're literally putting their lives in your hands. So this is not something to be taken lightly. If you want to do it for the money, trust me, go into business. You'll make a lot more money, and it's a lot easier and a lot less expensive to get there. So if you want to heal people, that's what I would do. So hope you found that helpful.